Your everlasting summer, you can see it fading fast. So you grab a piece of something that you think is gonna last. Well, you wouldn't even know a diamond if you held it in your hand. The things you think are precious, I can't understand. Are you reeling in the years? Are you stowing away the time? Are you gathering up the tears? Have you had enough of mine? You've been telling me you're a genius since you were 17. And all the time I've known you still don't know what you mean. The weekend in the college didn't turn out like you planned. The things that pass for knowledge I can't understand. Are you reeling in the years? Are you stowing away the time? Are you gathering up the tears? Have you had enough of mine? Welcome, welcome, welcome to another exciting episode of The Unrelenting Alchemist. All spiritual, all the time. In modern usage, the word mysticism often evokes images of serene meditation, divine ecstasy, profound unity with a higher power, or the pursuit of spiritual truth beyond ordinary perception. It has become a word woven into the language of seekers, sages, poets, and philosophers alike, signaling a personal, often inward, spiritual journey. Yet the origins of this evocative term stretch back to a very different context, that of ancient rites, closed lips, and esoteric teachings hidden from the eyes of the uninitiated. The term mysticism is derived from the Greek verb mua, which means to close or to shut, particularly in reference to the eyes or the mouth. This suggests secrecy, concealment, or the deliberate closing off of the senses to preserve sacred knowledge. Its derivative, mystikos, means secret of the mysteries and is directly related to the mustas, the initiate, who's undergone rites of purification and induction into religious mysteries. In this context, mysticism was not initially about private spiritual experience, but about formal participation in structured, often exclusive mystery cults of antiquity, such as the Eleusinian or the Dionysian cults, right? And in early Christianity, it came to denote divine secrets revealed through scripture or the sacraments. By the medieval period, mysticism had become associated with interior spiritual ascent, often described in terms of love, contemplation, and union with the divine. In modern times, it has further expanded to include a wide array of traditions, experiences, and even metaphysical explorations that seek direct contact with ultimate reality or transcendent truth. So, in this video, we're going to go into the evolution of the word mysticism from its etymological roots in ancient Greek initiation through its theological adaptations in mystical Christianity and the appropriation and reinterpretation in modern contemporary spiritual discourse. By exploring these meanings and how they've shifted across historical, religious, and cultural contexts, we gain not only insight into the word itself, but the broader human desire to know the unknowable and to experience the divine. The journey of mysticism is a journey of language, belief, and sacred longing, a mirror of humanity's enduring quest for the truth that goes beyond appearances. So going to the Greek roots, we have the etymological foundation of the word, and that's anchored in the Greek verb myo, which means to shut or to close. This term being commonly used in reference to closing the eyes or mouth, symbolizing secrecy, silence, withdrawal from ordinary sensory engagement. In this verb, several deliberative forms have emerged that would profoundly shape religious, philosophical, and eventually theological vocabulary. Among these are mystikos, which is secret or pertaining to the mysteries, mustes, which is the initiative and the or initiate, and mysterion, which is a mystery or hidden thing. In the religious context of ancient Greece, these words were integrally tied to the practice of religious mystery, esoteric cults that required formal initiation, ritual purification, and a vow of silence regarding these inner workings. The most famous of these being the Eleusinian mysteries, which were dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, and the Dionysian mysteries, which had to do with divine madness. And there were others that also came after, which focused on purification, privileged knowledge, as well as hope for a blessed afterlife. Now, the individual who was initiated into such a mystery organization, this was not a passive designation, but this is a status that was earned through sacred ritual. And according to the Greek dramatist Euripides and philosophers such as Heraclitus, they had undergone this inner transformation through external rites. The initiate was bound by secrecy, their understanding marked not just by intellectual comprehension, but by experiential encounter. And so when we think about this word and about the mystery, this really kind of referred to things that were hidden or secret. But in the context of these practices, it came to really represent divine truths that could only be accessed through initiation. These mysteries were not mere information to be learned, but sacred realities to be lived. Participation involved these dramatic rituals, often reenactments of mythological stories, intended to draw the initiate into alignment with divine cycles of death, rebirth, and transformation. Importantly, knowing these words like mystikos and its derivatives, connoted a kind of knowing that bypassed the rational mind. This is a knowing through silence, through immersion, and through direct experience. This characteristic remained the hallmark of mystical thought even as it evolved through later religious traditions. The transformation, thus, is not just a linguistic one, but a reflection of a deeper metaphysical transition from secrecy about the gods to union with the divine and more of an inner journey. This original usage emphasized exclusivity, ritual discipline, and sacred secrecy. Far from being a vague or generalized spirituality, the Greek origins of mysticism imply a concrete and embodied process of spiritual transformation reserved for a select few. So within this classical setting, the seeds of what would later be called mystical theology were first sown, roots that would be reshaped, translated, and even transformed through contact with Judaism and early Christianity. So let's turn to some universal expressions of mysticism in other faiths and cultures. Mysticism as a phenomenon cannot be confined to just its Greek etymology or even Western theological perspectives. Although the term mysticism is clearly Greek and evolved primarily through Christian contexts, the experience it refers to, direct, transformative encounter with the divine or ultimate reality, arose independently across other civilizations. From the deserts of Persia to the forests of China, from the Himalayan caves to the Sephardic study halls, excuse me, mystical paths diverged and many philosophical traditions emerged. The first is Buddhist mysticism, which is through emptiness. In Buddhism, mysticism is less about communion with a deity and more about realization of the nature of the mind. Especially in Mahayana and Vajrayana branches, the mystical path involves penetrating insight into sunyata, the emptiness or absence of inherent existence. Through deep meditation practices such as the Dzogchen, which is the great perfection, or Chanzen, the practitioner dissolves the illusion of ego and perceives the luminous non-dual ground of being. This is not achieved through logic or reasoning alone, but rather through direct experience, often under the guidance of a spiritual teacher. In Zen Buddhism, for example, the use of koans, which are paradoxical riddles that defy intellectual resolution, forces the mind into a state of direct knowing beyond duality. The resulting satori or kensho experience is mystical in the purest sense, sudden wordless realization of ultimate truths. In Taoist mysticism, we have the union with the way, and so this revolves around attuning the self to the Tao, which is the ineffable or unnameable source of all that exists. The Tao cannot be grasped by the intellect or even described by words. As Lao Tzu states in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Mystical insight often arises through Wu Wei, which is non-action or effortless action, which means that living in harmony with natural rhythms of the cosmos is ideal. Taoist mystics engaged in inner alchemical practices to refine the body and spirit, often seeking immortality or spiritual transcendence. Zhuangzi, another foundational Taoist text, speaks in poetic parables that mirror the non-rational style of Zen koans. Through quietude, simplicity, and surrender, the practitioner merges with the way, an experience akin to the Western idea of the divine union. So let's talk about Sufism, the heart's journey to the beloved. Sufism is the mystical dimension of Islam. It's a path of divine love, purification, and annihilation of the self, or the fanya, in the presence of God. Drawing upon the Quranic revelation and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, Sufis cultivate inner purity and spiritual intimacy with Allah through practices like dhikr, which is remembrance, and sama, which is listening to sacred music, and whirling, as practiced by the Mevlevi order. One of the most famous Sufi mystics, Jalal ad-Din Rumi, wrote poetry that expresses the ecstatic union of lover and beloved, a metaphor for the soul's relationship with God. The Sufi mystic is not merely a believer, but one who burns in longing, dances in ecstasy, and is annihilated in divine presence. This mirrors the mystical yearning in all traditions, the soul's thirst to return to its source. What about the Kabbalah? This is considered to be this hidden architecture of God. Thus, in Jewish mysticism, or Kabbalah, the mysticism is a deep study and experiential realization of the divine structure underlying all of reality. Central to Kabbalistic thought is the Tree of Life, a diagram of 10 Sephirot, or divine emanations, through which God interacts with the world. The mystical goal is not only knowledge of these emanations, but also to unite the masculine and the feminine aspects of the divine, to heal cosmic fractures, tikkun olam, and to bring one's soul closer to Ein Sof, the infinite. Practices included meditating on Hebrew letters, permutation of God's names, and studying esoteric texts like the Zohar. Mystical ascent in Kabbalah is both intellectual and experiential, a secret science path from master to student, demanding discipline, purity, and awe. The initiate moves from outer ritual to inner union, echoing the ancient mysticism of Greek mystery cults. What about Zoroastrian mysticism? And this is fire and divine order. Through less discussed mystical literature, Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion founded by Zarathustra or Zoroaster, contains esoteric dimensions. This kind of mysticism is rooted in the concept of Asha, which is truth or order, and the direct perception of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, not as a distant deity, but as the radiant truth present in all things. Initiates in Zoroastrian priesthood underwent purification rituals and chanted mantras invoking divine light and wisdom. Fire, as the visible symbol of Ahura Mazda, became a central object of contemplation and veneration. The idea of the soul's journey after death, crossing the Shinvat Bridge and ascending through the heavens, suggests a cosmology in which mystical ascent and purification are central. Zoroastrian mystical themes would later influence Sufism and even early Christian Gnosticism. Now, we also have the indigenous and shamanic mysticism variety, where you're trying to achieve a communion with spirit. And so in these indigenous traditions, from the Siberian steppes to the Amazon rainforest, from Native American tribes to African cosmologies, mysticism is lived through shamanic experience. The shaman, like the mythical priests of Greece, would undergo like a ritual death and rebirth to gain access to the spirit world through trance, through dance, through vision quests, plant medicine, drumming. The shaman enters altered states of consciousness to retrieve healing, guidance, or wisdom. These mystical practices emphasize communion with spirits, ancestors, in the natural world, all seen as alive, interconnected, and even sacred. Far from being primitive, these traditions contain rich cosmologies and ethical systems which are grounded in mystical experience. They remind us that mysticism is not only inward and silent, it's also communal, and it's embodied, and it's ecological. In conclusion, from its origins in the Greek word mustes, meaning to shut or conceal, the word mysticism has undergone a profound transformation linguistically, theologically, and philosophically. What began as a term denoting secrecy in ancient religious rites and organizations evolved into a vast multidimensional concept that transcends language and geography. While the etymological path of mysticism leads us through the sacred initiations of the Eleusis, the veiled secrets of early Christianity, the contemplative theology of the medieval West, its spiritual essence finds resonance in nearly every religious tradition across the globe. Whether in the Zen monk's sudden flash of enlightenment, the Sufi's ecstatic love of the beloved, the Kabbalist's meditative journey through the Sephiroth, or the Taoist sage's surrender of the ineffable Tao, the heart of mysticism remains the same. This is a yearning for direct encounter with the divine and the sacred. This encounter defies ordinary cognition, surpasses mere belief, and invites the practitioner into a lived experience of the divine, the eternal, the ultimate reality. Mysticism speaks not through doctrines, but through symbols, paradoxes, silence, and a transformation of the self. Across cultures, mystical traditions offer this recurring set of patterns: initiation, purification, inner ascent, and paradoxical language, experiential knowledge, and union with a greater reality. These features suggest that mysticism is not just a fringe element or of a faith, but rather it's an inner flame, a radiant core around which ritual, ethics, and myth provide. Through being cloaked in different languages and expressed through different cultures and metaphysical systems, the mystical impulse is a universal thread, testifying to the human soul's deep hunger for truth beyond appearances, unity beyond division, and meaning beyond the material. In our modern age, where mysticism is often associated with personal spirituality or psychological states, it's vital to remember that the sacred lineage from which the term emerged historically over time. True mysticism is not escapism or vague emotionalism. It is discipline. It is surrender. It is transformation. It is a sacred science tied to the soul that echoes from Eleusis to Tibet, from the Sinai to Persia, from the Ganges to the Amazon. Thus, to study mysticism is not merely to trace a word, it is to witness a story of humanity's most intimate and courageous pursuit. The quest to know what cannot be seen, to speak what cannot be spoken, and to become one with that which has no name perceivably. Thank you for listening. If you haven't checked out my new book, The SOPHIAN Way, A Spiritual Guide, is out. You can check it out on Amazon. The link is in the comments below. I definitely would appreciate your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me in the sacred hour. This has been another exciting episode of The Unrelenting Alchemist. Until next time, walk wisely, walk bravely, and when the dark calls, answer not with fear, but with fire and light. Take care. And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you.